Hi there, everyone. Hello. Welcome once again. I'm Clifford Bates, and this is Reading Machiavelli's Discourses. Today, we are actually going to finish book 1. Okay, this has been a follow-up. I list, like I joked at the other video. I said, I had the thing of 58, and I thought, okay, there's only one. I saw that when I realized that at the last chapter, and I saw the notes that it said 59, and then I realized when I was doing the last video, I thought I was the end video, but no, there's another chapter, paragraph. Okay, I'm going to be looking carefully next time to see if I got scammed again like this. So there's 60 chapters in book 1. And now we end this chapter with this question that its chapter title is called, that the consulate and any other magistrate, whatever in Rome was given without respect to age. So there was a consul. And any other magistrate, whatever in Rome was given without the question of age. So, this is a question. We only want young men, or... Now let's go. This is one paragraph. It has one section. It's one little thing. It's slightly. It's there. So let's deal with this. It's a brief thought. The question of age. One sees through the order of the history that after the consulate came to the plebs, the Roman Republic considered it to its citizens without respect to age or blood, and even that respect to age was never in Rome. But it always went out to find virtue, whether it was in the young or the old. So therefore, what the issue was virtue. In other words, not age. Age was not issue. It was virtue. So if you found someone who had virtue to be a consul, to do the job, to do the function of the function, the ability that you want them to, in other words, the authors had to do something. And to do that well, you needed virtue. Now, virtue means the right... We have to understand what virtue means here. Virtue does not mean moral goodness. It means, in this sense, virtue is the Greek conception of arete, which is the well-doing. It's the doing well. The doing the thing you have to do well, beautifully. Okay? And therefore, this is what virtue, arete, means in the Greek, and also even in Latin, in that sense. There's a masculine in Latin. The ver gives you a tied to the man, right? That therefore there's something manly about it in that sense in the Roman conception of in the Latin. But but therefore, this is what we have to understand, that virtue is more important than age. And age would be some wisdom or maturity or something like this. Okay. So let's go to next sentence, right? That is seen through the testimony of Valerius Corvinus, who was made consul at 23 years. Again, this is Livy 6, Livy 7:26, Livy 7. And the said Valerius, speaking to his soldiers, said that the consulate was a reward for virtue, not of blood. Right? Again, this is quoted from Latin from 7:32. Though Machiavelli substitutes blood for the Latin birth. Because I'm getting this not because of my birth. Originally, Livy says it's because of his birth. I'm doing this for my virtue, not because I'm from the right family. Machiavelli substitutes blood here in that sense, right? So he said, I'm the reward of virtue, not of my birth, or not of good blood here. My family blood, my line, in fact, I'm from that line, right? Whenever that thing was well considered, or not would be very much to be disputed. In other words, whether that thing was well considered or not would be very much to be disputed. As to blood, this was conceded through necessity. And the necessity that was in Rome would be that every citizen that wished to produce the effect that Rome produced, as had been said another time, For men cannot be given trouble without reward, nor can the hope of obtaining reward be taken away from them without danger, right? This is that line. Again, Discourses 1:6. Again, both here in 3 and 4, this would be Discourse 1:6. In other words, you can't, men cannot be cannot be given trouble without reward. You can't make difficulties for them without no reward, nor can hope of attaining the reward be taken away from them without danger. You're taking the thought of that. You take the reward, the hope of attaining a reward. You take that away, that you create a danger, right? Therefore, it is fitting at an early hour that the plebe have hope of gaining the consulate, and it was fed a bit with this hope without having it. In other words, they gave it hope, but they didn't get it. Then the hope was not enough, and it was fitting that it would come to effect. So in other words, you give them the hope. The hope, well, you got to eventually deliver on it, because otherwise there'll be danger. You don't, right? Hope was not enough. It was fitting that it came to effect. But the city that does not put its plebs to work in any glory, in other words, but the city that does not put its plebs to work in any glorious affair can treat it in its own mode. So therefore, in other words, they can treat it any way they want. In other words, that the city that does not put its pleb to work in any glorious affairs can treat it in its own mode, as is disputed elsewhere, right? Again, this is, 1 through 6, right? Book 1:6, Discourse. And one that wishes to do what Rome did does not have to make this distinction. In other words, they don't have to make that distinction. They've achieved great things. They wanted to do what Rome does. In other words, here, that the hope, in other words, you had to, the city that does not wish to put the plebs to great work can treat them in one mode, but they wanted to do them great works, right? It needed them to do great works. Therefore, Rome does not have to make this distinction. Given that it is thus, there is no reply to that lack of respect for time. In other words, given this, there is no lack of that respect for time, to that lack of respect for time, in that sense. It is even necessary for the choosing a youth for a rank that has need of the prudence of the old. It must be done for some very notable action that makes him reach that rank, since the multitude has to choose him for it. So in other words, we would expect the prudence of someone old and experienced, prudent. We'd expect this. That why would you choose a young person? It has to be some great reason that makes them choose the multitude for him. When a youth is of so much virtue that he makes himself known in some notable thing, it would be a very harmful thing for the city not to be able to avail himself of them, avail itself of him. In other words, it would be a harmful thing that the city not to be able to avail himself, and for it to have to wait until that vigor of spirit and that readiness grown old in him, which his fatherland could have availed of at that age, as Rome availed itself of Valerius Corvinus, Scipio, Pompey, and many others who triumphed very young. So in other words, you use them. In other words, this republic, the state needs them. The republic needs them in that sense. They needed him to do that. They needed him, and therefore they had the great virtue. Better use it. Use that. If it has that great ability, it has that great ability. It's better to use that able thing, than to wait until he's older But as he waits and gets older, he will maybe no longer have that same spark and that energy. That's how he ends this chapter. So with that, we end this chapter on that note and that theme. Please, if you have any comments or questions or issues of this theme or problems with it you think you want to talk about, you want to address yourself, please put them there and we'll address them in that sense. If you've liked it, hit the like button. Hit the like button. It helps the algorithm in that sense. Share it far and wide. Share it with your friends. Share it on your social media. If you've not subscribed, please consider subscribing. Encourage others to subscribe. It will help the channel get more attention. It'll increase the algorithm. So there's commenting, subscribing, liking, sharing, all this adds to the algorithm. Now, if you didn't like it, you can always thumbs down it, but say why in the comments. This way, people can learn and benefit from it. If you want to follow me on social media, the social media links are below. If you want to know more about me as a scholar and as a researcher and check out my scholarship and stuff like that, you can do so. Academic social media links below the social media links. And if you want to help me to do it, you want to help pay, and I'll contribute to do what I'm doing here. You can do so through subscribe to our Patreon. Listed, the URLs listed below. Or you can buy one of my books that are listed below, either at your local bookstore, of course, but also either at an online distributor like Amazon, Barnes & Noble, or through the publishers directly. Well, that's it. We now end Book 1, finally, and we'll turn to Book 2, first the prefaces and then the chapters. Okay, so we'll see each other next time, and you'll be looking at Book 2 of the Discourses. Take care and have a great day.